Alright, let's do a really quick video here on the C100 harness. This is the C100 harness. This connector here goes up by the firewall and it's going to go right back where it came from. But let's talk quickly about this junction here and some of the wires coming off. This wire is the transfer case range sensor. This wire is the ground. And I probably covered this in another video, but I'm just going to quickly cover it again. This third wire that comes out, starter motor, GM connector, so that's going to go over there. I'm going to walk over to the other side in a second and show you how I suggest you hook that up. But before I do, this other wire is going to go forward to the crank sensor, which is covered in the other video. But look at your C100 breakout here. These are going to be your snaps that go into the brake booster. One's here, one's here. So that gives you kind of an identity of where this sits. And then you'll see these breaking out here. Now the two I want to show you are oil pressure, and again, this probably will not be present if you're watching this video and you don't have your kit yet, because we're eliminating that, and coolant temp. And again, that probably will not be present, but let me show you what we do. Wire comes around, and this is the factory Chrysler coolant temp sensor right next to the number 8 cylinder. This is a 12mm thread originally from GM. Nothing fits it. Drill and tap it out to 3/8 pipe and install your coolant temp sensor. Put a brass sensor in. They're upgraded. Don't use the plastic one if you have it. If you have to use it, go ahead and use it. Here's that stud we talked about cutting off the head on so that you don't hit the firewall. And starter motor. Let's talk about the starter motor wire. Now the starter motor is sitting right here. This is an LS3 manifold. If this is a Trailblazer, it would be angled back. I think the Trailblazer manifolds work better, but these LS3 manifolds work fine too. So what I like to do is I like to bring the starter motor wire down along the tranny dipstick tube, then forward and up. This way, by making this big loop down here, you are not exposing it to the exhaust. If you bring it up here, like some guys tend to do, you can see how close we're getting to the exhaust. Don't do that. Bring it down. That's why Wendy's got 4 feet of wire on this. Bring it down and loop it back up around, and that way you're not exposed to any of the exhaust. And don't forget to hook your 3-ended ground strap up. So here's the C100 main connector that's going to be up on the firewall. We talked about this breakout, which goes to the coolant temp sensor. Let's look at this connector that breaks out right next to that harness. Now it's going to come up and terminate in this 4-pin flat 4-pin Molex connector. This is going to be run up into the cab. These are your Prindle wires, park, reverse, neutral wires. This is how we're going to control park, neutral, safety, reverse lights, ESP modes, and other things. So we're going to run that up into the cab. Coming down, this is essentially all your original. You're going to use these original snaps next to the brake booster, and we'll show that when we get to it. This ground goes right in front of the brake booster. This wire that broke off with the Prindle wire is currently your oil pressure sensor connector, which we are running on the side of the oil pan where that cap is. However, by the time you see this video, this probably is gone because our new electronics emulate this sensorless, so we don't need to run it anymore. But if you do have a harness with that, that's where it's going to go. So coming down, we got our ground. These are the 2 snaps that go up there by the driver fender well. These are your computer connectors. Put them back on your computer where they came off. You notice this has 3 wires, or 3 connectors. If this was a manual transmission JK, you'd only have 2. This end connector is your transmission connector. With a manual transmission, you don't have that connector. These are all original. This round one is your AC pressure transducer or pressure sensor, this is your alternator connector, and this is your air compressor, AC air compressor connector. So this is all going to go right back the way it was. So let's come back up and look at some of the other break-offs. This is your transfer case range sensor, so it's going to go into the top of the transfer case, right back where it was. This is a ground. This is where I recommend you ground it, on the inside of the head. I do not suggest you ground it out here because the firewall's right here. And while I'm mentioning that, this bolt on this rear coil usually has a stud sticking out. Cut the stud off or put a regular 6mm bolt in, because the firewall does come pretty tight to this. So do that while the engine's out. Let's come back at this main breakout here. This is your ground. This is your transfer case range sensor. This is going to go up and forward along the fuel rail and down to your crankshaft position sensor, at least currently. So that's going to go to this crankshaft position sensor connector. So you're going to run it down through here. Let's see what else we got. Well, that's pretty much it on the hang on, we got one more coming off, and that's going to come up and starter motor. Now we have a GM starter motor wire. If we modified your harness, it's got a red wire going to the starter motor solenoid. Originally on the Chrysler this was yellow, but we've installed the starter motor connector for you. So that pretty much finishes off the C100. What we're going to do now is we're going to pile all these wires up onto the top of the engine, keep them compact so we can drop the body. Before we drop the body, I am going to talk about the transfer case adapter briefly, and we'll go over that.